I don't want to spend a lot of time on intros, but 20 seconds, tell us who you are so these people know, and then we'll get into a great conversation.
I'm Nam. I'm one of the core contributors on Bonk, which is a Solana-based meme coin, focused on developing real products and helping the meme industry grow up a little bit in the next bit.
Roham, founder and CEO of Dapper Labs, makers of CryptoKitties, NBA Top Shot, NFL All Day, Disney Pinnacle, among others.
Wabam, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at ApeCoin. We're the coin of the Yuga Bored Ape Yacht Club ecosystem, and we have ApeChain, our flagship blockchain.
All right, I wanted to start the conversation because whether it's sort of NFTs as digital pictures, whether it's meme coins, the narrative has been crazy over the last couple of years in both of these ecosystems. And so I wanted to get your quick take on how are things going now, knowing we've been through so many ups and downs on both meme coins as well as the NFT ecosystem. Start with you.
There's obviously been a lot of involvement, especially in a post-COVID era, of what communities mean in Web3 and the way that people are identifying with certain tribes, ways they're being on. Rohan is obviously a perfect example to explain on this a bit more. But memes right now are kind of the signaling identity for how people choose to say that they're wanting to be circulated with various different things, but that's a hyper-rotational area where people are consistently trying to find new narratives and new things that they want to be excited about versus the longer time frame that crypto's at currently. So I think in general right now, the sector is trying to figure out what does it mean for people to choose an identity and build on top of it.
Ram, where are we at?
100% agree with that, whether it's sports fans collecting digital trading cards or whether it's profile pictures. But kind of abstracting out, I think it's not about meme coins or NFTs, it's just about a new business model for the internet. Today, you have advertising, you have micropayments, you have subscription. NFTs are a way to try and create a new business model for brands, new business model for creators, new business model for communities. That obviously creates new kinds of communities, just like every platform shift does. And we see our role as just helping those brands and those creators bring experiences to their communities that are sustainable, that engage wider and wider cohorts of their fans, and try to do that in the right way. I mean, obviously 2021, 2022, the pace of introduction of these concepts into the public consciousness was so dramatic that, let's say, when you talk about digital collecting, you were talking about on ESPN collecting a product that hadn't existed 3 or 6 months before, whereas now there's years of history and years of communities that are being built. So I think the priority for us is just trying to figure out how do you make things people want and bring it to them, not put this label of NFT or meme coin, but just engage with that community where that community is.
Same thought building on that. We think a lot at ApeChain about hiding the wires, account abstraction. How can we get people to use NFTs to participate in meme coins and meme culture without even being aware that they're using NFTs or meme coins? For better or worse, those terms are loaded in a lot of communities and a lot of the world. So on ApeChain, we talk a lot about how do we sort of onboard folks without them realizing that they're being onboarded using Web3 Rails.
Roham, I want to go back to you. A lot of people credit you and NBA Top Shot as really the thing that brought people into the NFT ecosystem. We saw unbelievable amounts of value be created, be sold, be redistributed, but also it was really the first time I think people thought about the financialization of culture in terms of a blockchain. You guys deserve a ton of respect for that. Now we fast forward to 2025. You still saw $5 million in sales of Rafiq Anadol's work this week. It's not like people have gone away, but the sort of passion and the conversation around NFTs has taken a little bit of a different turn. And I'm just wondering, as someone who's been doing it as long as you do, how do we change perception to really get to your point, the core technology of what this does?
Well, I mean, look, the real OGs would give us a little more credit because 3 years before NBA Top Shot, we actually wrote the first NFT standard, and with CryptoKitties brought the first digital. I think that was the time when a lot of folks first realized crypto can be more than currency, that we can actually start building applications with this technology. But even back then, my co-founder Dieter, who's the CTO of Flow Blockchain, where all our products are built on, he coined the term NFT. But when we were talking about it, we didn't think much about it because we realized, hey, look, people used to talk about MP3s, but now they just talk about songs. People used to talk about uploading AVIs, but now there's MPEGs, but now they talk about videos, right? That's how technology evolves. We talk about the file format, which is the fungible token or the non-fungible token, but really the way consumers will think about it is, hey, these are digital trading cards. These are digital pins. These help me win tickets to go to Disneyland. These help me join a community of like-minded folks and engage in the way I wouldn't otherwise be able to. That's, I think, how people will talk about these things as the community, not the technology. And by the way, with the rise of AI and the change in both how we build our products, but also the kinds of products that can be built, like within these ecosystem, people can come in, whether it's ApeChain or others, use AI to create new kinds of products, and those products will be used by consumers who are not even maybe realizing how this all kind of started, which is a hyper-spec speculative kind of collectible ecosystem.
Well, Bob, I want to jump to you for a second, because what Yuga's done with the Bored Apes Ape Chain is such a beautiful example of what Roham's talking about. It is a community. The community has a container which is creating a rule set, and then there is the currency that's within the community itself, and what that does and the access it brings based on your participation. What are the challenges, though, that you have seen in trying to sort of spread that word, get that message out?
I think the speculative boom of 2022, 2021, and the crash that happened both across crypto and within NFTs leads to this. I mentioned it earlier, there's a bit of like a knee-jerk reaction to the term NFT in a lot of circles, which makes it hard to onboard new people. Of course, that's not everybody. You know, we've got a thriving NFT community on ApeChain, and the Bored Ape Yacht Club is a thriving, strong community, and that's despite there not really being a ton of like volatility in the price of those assets. People aren't still holding Bored Apes because they're necessarily expecting it to go back to 100 ETH. They're staying in the club because they love the community, they love the culture, they identify as being part of it, and you see that happening on ApeChain with a lot of NFT collections as well. So the challenge for us is, you know, how do we continue to onboard more folks to make that appeal wider, given some of those tensions that you have around the technology and the terms and the fallout from 2022.
And Nam, I want to come to you. Roham and his team was putting the work when no one cared and building things that a really small audience loved. Bonk comes along and immediately sort of catches fire. And then almost it felt like you guys reverse engineered innovation into the community. What does it mean now to have this very passionate community that you're then building things that keep them involved?
I think there's a very large belief in memes of this idea of like no utility, no revenue means there's no ceiling. It means they can do anything. And that works for a set period of time until you get to the area of just like, well, what does this asset actually have a value for? What does it mean to be a part of holding on to this as purely more than just a speculative play? Because if you're only ever a speculative play or based on something for attention, that lasts until the market discovers something new. And that's where you've seen, you know, the rise of various different memes, right? Pepe obviously has a lot of time and attention. Then you have things like Whiff that get time and attention, then Fartcoin, and then all these other things. And you're always going to be looking over your shoulder if you're in a leader position if you don't have anything to offer other than that. The good thing about meme coins, and obviously what also NFTs and these other like areas or kind of like sectors have proven, is that you can convert the commoditized attention or the value that your community has into applications, into use cases, into things that people will actually spend time using and spending time on the blockchain for. So for Bonk, what we try to do is essentially develop a bunch of long-term greedy communities that can develop their own ideas, use the IP, create various different products with the goal of creating their own businesses that are just under the banner of a cute, friendly dog. And at the end of the day, if it's getting more people to spend more time on chain with applications rather than just purely on the speculative layer, I think that's healthy long-term comparative to the idea of just like, all right, well, I'm going to hold this for 72 hours because Murad is tweeting about something, right? That lasts for a while, but it's not going to be able to last forever.
I think a lot about that we are evolving from kind of nation states that have physical borders to network states of just people with like-minded passion, right? If I think of the network state of Taylor Swift and the ability for that state to have its own digital imagery, its own collectibles, its own currency, and completely spread across the globe. And the fact that she and that team focuses still so much on giving all of that to Instagram and giving all of that to Twitter and all of that to Facebook and to TikTok, as opposed to owning those rails. What do we need to get some of these really big cultures in to start seeing, oh, we can actually really reward our community back instead of rewarding Mark Zuckerberg? Rohan, why don't you start?
Well, I mean, I think it's a tension, right? Because you've heard a couple times say less speculation, but I think the reality is that the public wants speculation. And if you think of like even our industry in sports, everyone that watches sports has something writing on something about the game, whether it's they're collecting, whether it's they're gambling, or they have fantasy lineup, whatever it is. For better or worse, the social media lifestyle that everyone's sort of living in means that we need that extra dopamine hit. And so skin in the game social media is very much the future. And this idea of having ownership in the communities that you're a part of, being able to contribute and grow that ownership, et cetera, is very real. Now, the problem is that how would Taylor Swift today launch a token or even an NFT collection in a way that is beneficial to her fans first and foremost? Whatever she does in the current construct, even following the playbook of Top Shot, would cause that. There's no way to sort of avoid it. That's a big issue that we're trying to figure out how to solve. You might have seen a week ago, we launched a series of new meme coins for CryptoKitties and trying to figure out, we're still calling them meme coins or meow coins, but that'll get kind of abstracted out. And that's a whole problem to solve. How would a mainstream community introduce a token-based community or token-based ownership into the way they engage with their fans and the way the fans engage with each other? We don't have the exact playbook, but it looks something between a mix of NBA Top Shot, the Top Shot fungible token, CryptoKitties and what it's sort of doing. But then how do you actually introduce that? How do you reward existing customers? I mean, the fact is also true in B2B. The whole concept of using tokens to break the network effect and bridge the user acquisition sort of gap between mainstream platforms and a new product, that hasn't played out yet. What actually ends up happening in most cases is the tokens reward the early speculators, and then the later community either comes or doesn't come, and in most cases doesn't come. In cases like Uniswap, very different, right? Because they had that product market fit, the token rewarded the community, that caused them to sort of go to a new level. How do you create that in the cases where you can't have that sort of immaculate conception of no one knowing there's going to be a token before there is a token?
But I just want to double click for a second. There is almost nobody in our space more than yourself who's talking to the NFL, NBA, Disney. You're talking to the people who could make this happen. And I think they're scared of what it means to their ecosystem. What's the one thing you need to say to them to say, let's try an experiment?
If we're talking about fungible tokens, we need a playbook more than just let's experiment. You know, when we started talking to the NBA back in 2018, 2019, we had CryptoKitties to show them. And so there was a sort of model of, hey, these are the things that went right, these are the things that went wrong, this is what we're going to do different. And I think today we're still trying to figure out that sort of playbook. You're saying they're scared, but for good reason, right? Like the way fungible tokens have worked out for most mainstream influencers, from Dave Portnoy to everybody else, it's a little too spicy for most of these things. And at the end of the day, you have to think of fan first. And how do you create something that rewards the fan and actually creates a new engagement model that couldn't exist before, which I think we have with NBA Top Shot. When we created that product 5 years ago, the concept of digital collectibles wasn't a thing. And today you go to any sports conference, they have a digital collectibles panel, and it's assumed, it's a fait accompli, that people will collect things digitally because we live in a digital first world and sports fans are all about collecting things physically. It's just a question of what's that right user experience, what's the right economy, what's the right way to bring it to the masses in a way that doesn't remove the speculation, because that's part of even card collecting. I'm going to rip this pack, what am I going to get in it? Or I'm going to collect this rookie, what's going to happen in 10 years when I give it to my kid, etc. How do you bring that digital without losing the magic, but also without over-indexing on the fan that's doing it just to make money?
I actually think that you can do it without the speculation. I think that you can use Web3 Rails to bring culture on chain, to bring sports, to bring music on chain without needing to make a token that is a meme coin of an artist or a meme coin of an athlete. Use stable coins to help athletes and help artists get paid faster, to cut out middlemen, whether that's around merch or around music or different obstacles that artists and athletes face. I think there's ways that we can bring culture on chain without having to sort of speculate and have fans holding the bags.
I want to jump on, and now I'm going to come to you about this, which is, I agree completely, and I think that we all probably would agree with that, and that reimagining the financial rails is the opportunity we're all playing in a beautiful way. Roham talked about for the brands, it's a little too spicy. I look at the Bonk community and they want spicy, right? They are in because they want to find the next unicorn fart dust that's going to go here and then see if they can get out before. Is there an opportunity within, let's say, the Bonk ecosystem where the game we're playing is quick hit up and downs and really playing speculation as an art?
Yeah, you've got to the point where like the NHL playoffs are on right now. The sports networks that are advertising like 4-leg game day parlays, and anybody who has experience in gambling understands like that's a terrible bet more than anything, but you're rinsing an entire community of sports watchers because they want to have incentives inside of the game and they want to feel like they're being a part of it. The community looks for speculation, they look for the opportunity, and people are continuing to look for opportunities on how can they not necessarily monetize their hobbies, because the second that you attach like a dollarly hour rate towards a hobby, it no longer becomes fun. But they are looking for opportunities to monetize their time and attention. You talk about non-fungible tokens, but you have non-fungible profiles in your Google account or in your Spotify profile in terms of your data, your attention, your likes, your preferences. These are essentially traits that you're looking at. It's just not the kind of hat that your Bored Ape is wearing, right? It's the same sort of area, and that's being monetized by external companies that are using that and selling it to other various data brokers and everything that gets into there. But there's no reason that your Google account or your Twitter profile couldn't be represented by an NFT and have those traits that other people are currently making money on actually be something that you have and that you own and that's yours. But that causes a very large dynamic shift in the advertising model and isn't necessarily something that those existing companies want to go for. So what you see is now there's the commoditization of people's time, attention, and that goes into like people who call tokens on Twitter or tweet contract addresses, right? It's the same area where they're taking the power of their social media influence or the groups that they're a part of. You could represent that as like, what's the power of your social network? And they're able to monetize that by pushing various different tokens. And I think you're going to see that get more easily corresponded to how brands engage with micro influencers overall, and they change from like what what these high-level individuals are that are pushing various different brands or organizations, right? Like, it'd be great if Taylor Swift was tweeting about Bonk, but that's probably not going to happen, right? What does it mean for other groups or other celebrities that instead of launching their tokens, they engage with existing brands and they utilize their own celebrity as a way to continue to push it? Bored Ape was a fantastic example of that for the celebrity groups being involved with it. I think that's just something that needs to get refined, and the primitives probably don't exist there yet, but Rohan will probably make them over the next couple of years. I'm great. I get to just sit and enjoy and speculate while he works.
Elon's leading the way there, no?
Yeah.
Yes. On the stage yesterday, Dave Portnoy was talking about Jailstool and the fact that he then said, I'm going to release a token to buy more Jailstool, and I'm going to sell it. It still goes up. He sells it. They say, you rug pulled us. He says, you know what? I'm going to do it again. He does it again. It goes up. He sells it. They say, you rugged us. There is something that I think is...
But when you talk about tokens, these are programmable digital assets, markers of ownership, and you can program it to do anything. Why are we just talking about buying and selling them?
Agreed.
You see what I mean? The whole industry and the whole person, hey, I'm going to create this coin and I'm going to sell it. The only thing you can do is buy it and then decide when to sell it. That's not the end all of this technology.
But that's not just something that you can apply to like memes or the idea of like the Portnoy coins. Well,
It's
a lot of buying and selling is the only value or use case for a variety of different tokens that are on the market.
Absolutely.
What we try to do is apply additional utility or additional use cases to them in order to make it more than buying and selling. But most of what we do is just buy and sell the tokens anyways, right? There's plenty of booths here that are talking about all these things that the tokens are going to be doing. 99% of the way it's going to be engaged is that.
I think Roman's point is perfect, right? You guys are doing digital pins in essence for Disneyland. At some point, 50 years from now, someone's going to show their digital pin that they minted, right? And it's going to be a nostalgic moment. It's going to be a memory. It's going to be a way to connect with your kids. We lose the perspective on that when all we talk about is, did I make my next 10x and 100x? And I would say, even though I think what Bonk and what ApeChain are doing are trying to provide rails to create opportunities for people to make businesses and create with each other and make art and all of the things there, we sometimes get too taken up with like, oh, Ansem tweeted about this token, so therefore I must get in before it sells. And so therefore, I'm just wondering, this financialization of culture is a beautiful thing, but it also is a bit of a toxic thing. How do we distinguish what it means to financialize culture and do it in a way that makes sense?
It's hyper-focused for crypto because of just the attention on price and valuation, all these different things. We don't have the value of how is Bitcoin trending in social media or Novogratz talking about it right now. We have price, we have a ticker. 2024 was the year of the dragon. Starbucks released a series of collectible coffee cups that were all dragon themed. The secondary market on those went ridiculous, but you don't see anybody talking about it in terms of like, oh, what's the secondary market of Starbucks cups doing to the value of Starbucks as a brand, right? This is what people look at because the price in crypto is the most important factor right now. And until that changes or until that gets modified a little bit into what do these things do, it's going to continue that way. But we're working on it.
Yeah, no one thinks about this more than you.
Yeah.
How do we both incentivize culture and allow for price to be a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that, and I think part of it is just a function of time, and part of it is a function of new kinds of utilities and applications being built on top. I would say early days of the internet, you look at early days of social media, people were saying no real brand will engage with their customers directly. And you look today, the only brands that are getting consumer attention are the ones that are engaging with their customers directly. And so things that seem spicy end up being not spicy 10 years down the line. Sometimes it takes time. And part of the problem with crypto is that you can make so much money serving the crypto community that it's hard to kind of take the time to, hey, let me cross the chasm and build something that goes beyond the core circle. But I think it's inevitable. It's already happening, whether it's in the branded communities or in the newer IPs or in the wave of kind of creator-led growth that's going to come from Gen AI and all that stuff. Crypto rails will be the economic rails for the internet and for all of this increased creativity, increased application development. And just the last thing I'll say is AI will bring the cost of creating down to zero, whether that's creating new art, creating new prose, creating new code. Crypto is just about openness and about permissionlessness and about remixing and being able to build on top of each other in a way that economically makes sense to each layer. And so AI will supercharge crypto in a way that people don't fully wrap their heads around yet, because there's going to be so many more people looking for the benefits that crypto provides. So I've never been happier to be kind of where we're sitting, because also expectations of the market are kind of here, and I think we can over-deliver.
Well, no one has ridden this wave more than Yuga and the apes and ApeChain. So what are your final thoughts on how do we continue to create a culture while also not over-financializing?
I think we have to make it safe to bring culture on chain, make it safe for artists, make it safe for athletes, make it safe for musicians. We have to hide Web3, hide the wires, so that we can use Web3 rails to help artists and athletes and people who are creating culture benefit, but do it in a way that it's not scary, that there's no rise and fall, there's no massive speculative bubble that leaves culture creators holding the reputational bags when the people who bought into whatever they brought on chain, when they end up losing money after the fall. So hide the wires, use the rails in a way that breaks down barriers and benefit culture creators. And stable coins, account abstraction, all those things are going to empower the next wave of bringing culture on chain.
Amazing. Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you all for your attention. We will take it and monetize it. We appreciate it.